Okay, so what I'm doing tonight is I just wanted to take a minute to talk about something that's been in the news, and it's going to shock all of you. It has to do with COVID-19. But this particular issue has more to do with the repatriation of the Americans that were on the Diamond Princess cruise ship in Yokohama, Japan. So for those not following, a story came out today saying that President Trump was furious that he hadn't been informed that there were going to be infected passengers coming back on those repatriation flights. So bottom line is, it was really a messy situation that was rapidly evolving, and I don't think anybody expected it to turn out that way. So to backtrack, however, these folks were on a 2-week cruise that went to various parts around Asia and ended in Yokohama, Japan. When they arrived back to the port, it had been previously determined that one of the passengers had tested positive for COVID-19. Now, this individual wasn't on the ship at this point. It was one of these cruises where people, as you're going from port to port, people are getting on the ship and off the ship. So the passenger had already disembarked, but was later found positive for COVID-19. So when the Diamond Princess came to Yokohama, Japan, they were told that the passengers couldn't get off the ship. And these folks were required to stay on board for 14 days to complete a 14-day quarantine. During this time, they were like taking their temperature frequently and so forth. And if they developed a fever, they were tested and removed from the ship if they were positive. 3,700 people on board. Eventually, we're up to about 630 of them are positive. So there was a really high rate of transmission. On February 15th, which was just a couple of days before the quarantine was supposed to end, the United States sent 2 planes to Japan to pick up the passengers that were Americans and fly them home. This was about 2 days before the end of the quarantine was scheduled to be done. And at the time, I thought that the United States was being pretty crafty. They're giving folks a free ride home, but they're also ensuring that when those people get back into the United States, that they have additional quarantine. And that's exactly what happened. So they went to pick these folks up. They had been told ahead of time, hey, if you take our offer, you're going to come back. We're going to put you in quarantine for 14 days. And then after that's done, you can go home. So American authorities land in Japan. They go to the ship. They load up all these folks onto buses. There's about 328 of them that are loaded onto 2 different buses. They're driven to the airport. Somewhere between the ship and the airport, the U.S. authorities are told by the Japanese authorities that, oh, by the way, 14 of those folks just tested positive for COVID-19. So that's the decision the CDC and the State Department had to make was, do we let these folks onto these repatriation flights, or do we say that these 14 infected individuals can't get on the plane? So let's look at the options here kind of quickly. Number 1, the planes had already been fitted with isolation areas because the plan was originally that, hey, only healthy folks are going to be allowed onto the plane. But officials have planned for the possibility that some of these folks might get sick en route. And if they do, they need to have somewhere to put them, right? So they made quarantine isolation areas on these planes that had like plastic walls that were 10 feet tall and so forth and so on. Everyone on the bus has a mask on. They've all theoretically been in a situation for 2 weeks that had a high possibility for transmission, meaning it was possible they had already been exposed, which is why they needed the isolation areas on the plane. So one option that they had was to say, you know what, we loaded everybody up. None of these folks have symptoms. 14 of them have now tested positive. We're going to put them on the isolation areas in these planes, and everybody's going to go home anyway. The second option was to say, nope, they can't get on the plane. So what happens then, right? Well, in the meantime, what was going on was Japan was becoming overwhelmed with the number of people that they were treating that were COVID-19 positive, in addition to like the normal flu season and stuff like that, right? So it wasn't guaranteed that they were going to have, that these 14 people were going to have admission to a hospital right away. In fact, just a couple of days after this, David and Sally Abel, who are UK citizens, who have been on the Diamond Princess, gained fame with their vlog that was on Facebook and then on YouTube, they both tested positive. And after testing positive, they sat in their room for almost 24 hours, or maybe it was a little over. Anyway, it was overnight. They slept all night. They got up the next morning, still didn't know what was going on. They knew that they had been tested positive, but it was a long time before they knew that information, and they were moved off of the ship because it was unclear where they were going to go. First, they were told that they were going to go to a hostel. Then they were told that they were going to go to a hospital. Then they didn't know. It turns out they were taken off the ship and they went to a hospital initially where some tests were done and so forth. And it seemed like, treatment was going to be great. They were able to communicate, didn't really have much internet access, but things looked good, right? Unfortunately, then things changed, and they were transferred from that, what seemed to be very, very nice hospital where communication was an issue, but not like a major problem, to this other hospital far away, in which they are describing this as more of a, concentration camp type scenario or prison type scenario. Bottom line is not nearly as posh as the first hospital that they were in, but then even more importantly, they can't communicate with the medical staff there. So for an extended period of time, no one there spoke English well enough for them to know what was going on with their treatment. It was discovered that David Abel has fairly advanced or serious pneumonia. Sally Abel has mild pneumonia. They were talking about putting David Abel possibly needing like a ventilator and then not, and the family was trying to communicate. It was a real nightmare, and it still is this is a nightmare for these people. They are really stressed out over it. This is the situation that the Americans would have been in had we not flown them home. Because I'm sure, Diamond Princess was going to reboard these patients because everybody that had been testing positive on the ship was taken off of the ship. So there were pros and cons to both. The CDC apparently wanted nothing to do with the folks that were infected. They said, nope, they need to stay in Japan, get treatment there. We're just flying COVID-19 negative and also folks that are well. Those are the only people that we're going to transport home. The State Department disagreed with that and felt that we had a humanitarian responsibility to take people home, that this was a rapidly evolving situation, and so forth and so on. And ultimately, the State Department had authority to make the decision. And so everybody was loaded up on the planes. The COVID-19 individuals were placed in isolation rooms, and everybody was flown back to the United States. So before we all, criticize officials, I think it's important to realize that this was a really complex, rapidly changing situation that was not what was expected, and that the people in top levels of government at both the CDC and the State Department were trying to make decisions that were in the best interest of the people on that plane. And you know what? Sometimes in these really complicated situations, particularly in healthcare, not everybody that's on the team is going to agree, particularly when you've got things that change in a lot of different ways that you're looking at it. CDC, their first and foremost priority is going to be disease control and prevention. And so, of course, they don't want anyone who's sick on the plane. The State Department is also interested in that, but they are going to be much more cognizant of the diplomatic issues that are going to arise when you leave Americans that potentially are sick in a foreign country that has a healthcare system being overwhelmed with a novel virus. So that's the way it is. You know what? I'd love to hear your comments on this and what you think, they should have done and so forth and so on. But I guess my bottom line is, without being too political, I think Donald Trump needs to kind of cool his jets on this one and understand that there were good people who were thinking about this from all angles. And unfortunately, they didn't agree on how to proceed with this. But I think that they were thinking about it in the right ways. So I hope everybody has a good evening. I am going back to work in 2 days after being off very, very sick for more than a week. So I'm excited about that. I hope everybody has an enjoyable rest of their weekend. Bye.